one of the things that I share with people often is that if you will commit to what I call the 3 to 5 year grind, you will eventually look up and realize that you have made a shift. And what I mean by this is you will shift from clients of the industry to clients in the industry. And so, what I mean by that for me is when you think about any industry, it doesn't matter if we're talking about insurance, real estate, cutting hair, being a yogi, every person must surrender to a 3 to 5 year period of time where you put your head down and you master that industry. And one thing that I see time and time again, I mentioned this from stage at Masterminds a few weeks ago, and it really hit a nerve with a few people. In our society today of Amazon priming everything and wanting it in 2 days on our doorstep, we have developed what I call hallucinated urgency. And it's based on a dysfunctional relationship with time. Said another way, we have lost our sense of patience, and think of patience as kind of a dirty word. Like people even will say or kind of brag, I'm not a patient person, which I completely understand. And yet one thing I want each and every one of you to understand or get is that your life evolves through two different spectrums. There's the macro and then the micro. So the macro is kind of your vision. This is what it is that you're intending to achieve from, a larger scale. And the one thing they talk about this is your someday goal. That is your macro goal. And if you're thinking big, if you're thinking about a big life for you, whatever that might look like, then there's a certain amount of patience that you're just going to have to make peace with. And I'll never forget, last year, I had an expert interview with a man named James Cummings, and James is the second largest owner of Great Clips, the franchise of Great Clips in the entire country. And he said, anytime you step into an industry, for a minimum of 3 to 5 years, you're going to have to put your head down and just push through the grind. And I just want each and every one of you to hear that and make peace with it, because what I see, unfortunately, is people taking a 3 to 5 year grind and actually expanding it over 6 to 10 or 8 to 12 years, instead of just making peace with the fact that there are certain things that I'm going to have to master, certain skills, certain like activities that I may not like or enjoy doing that I'm going to have to do anyway, if my goal is important enough to me. And so I wanted to start off with just this understanding, a reckoning. And I feel like there's some, for those of us that took our eye off the ball, for so to speak, over the last few years, and we got away from the fundamentals, there's a little bit of shame and guilt on that. And I just want everybody to kind of stop that shit, because what was happening from 2019 till about probably April of last year is when it really started to change. Is we were sitting in the boat as fishermen and fisherwomen, and the fish were jumping into the boat so quickly, we literally could not even clean and eat the fish that were jumping into the boat. And so at that point, there was really no way for us to have continued to focus on the fundamentals of what's the right bait, how many lines do we need in the water, should we be using poles, should we be using nets. And I just want each and every one of us to kind of give up on that guilt or shame, if that's happening within you, if I took my eye off the ball, because the fish were jumping in the boat so quickly. I mean, we were just doing everything that we could to keep up, right? And so moving forward, though, there are two forces that are acting on our industry. The first is obviously the Fed doing the best that they can to control inflation. And they're doing that through the rising and keeping interest rates at a 20-year high. It's necessary. And there's been a really great message that I would encourage each and every one of you to be sharing, whether it's socially through social media or just in the conversations that you're having with buyers right now, if they're saying, oh, I don't want to buy at 7.3, which is where the rates just dropped to the other day. I want to wait till rates come down. That's great. Just understand though, that if you do that, what you will save in rate, you are going to make up for in price. And what I mean is if rates go back down to 5 or even into the 4s, what we're going to see is all these people enter the market, and we're going to go right back to 7 offers on every house, right? Negotiating inspections out, making all these concessions for the seller, because we still have not solved the inventory issue. And the people that compare this to 2008 and 2009, I will totally agree. It feels very much the same. The real estate market overall has dropped 25, 30%. And yet what was different back then, and Jennie will attest to this, is I remember getting a call on a Monday from a buyer wanting to look at a house, and I could literally tell them, we'll look at it on Saturday. And not having
Yeah.
one, are you agreeing with that, Jennie? Like
Yes.
I
No
wouldn't
urgency.
I wouldn't care at all. I'd be like, oh yeah, there's no way that house is going under contract. We had 12 months of inventory. 12
Yeah.
months. It would take a year just to sell what was on the market.
Mhm.
And so the other thing, I share that with you because I wanted today to be kind of tactical in the sense of like, what are the conversations we can be having right now? And that's definitely one. If you're rating on rates, what you lose or make up in rate, you're going to lose in price. So it's either way, you can buy now and then refinance later and take advantage of the rates when they do come down at a lower price, or you can wait for rates to go down and you're going to get smacked on price. That's what's going to happen because there's just no inventory. Now, the other side of this is obviously our industry is under a little bit of an attack here with the commission rates. And I don't share that to be alarmist, but if a lot of your business is on the buyer side, one thing that you need to be working on is itemizing out what it is that you do for buyers. And you're going to have to get really good at articulating the value that you bring to the table, because if we see sellers start the process, and we're already seeing this in bigger cities, Denver is one, where they're offering 0% on the buyer side as compensation, which they have the right to do. Well, that's just the opportunity for each and every one of us to be really good and clear about what it is that we bring to the table. And we're working right now on protocols. I was on a conversation yesterday with Jen Davis on this, that we can give to each and every one of you to display your value. But what I want you to hear about that is I remember in 2021 in the state of Kansas, it went to the Supreme Court that they were thinking about doing away with tenure for coach or for teachers, right? Where, tenure works where if you're a teacher for a certain amount of time, then essentially you can't be fired without it being like these egregious acts, right? And my sister is a teacher at a school in Wichita. And I was talking to her about it, and I said, are you concerned about tenure? And she said, I don't give a shit about tenure. And I said, well, why is that? And she said, because I'm a really good teacher. I'm really good at what I do. And so on the buy side of the business, one thing that I think it's happened is we've been living under tenure. And now we're going to have to prove our value. And for those of us that have the mindset of bring it on, good, I have the value, then this is going to be one of the most opportunistic times that we have ever had. Because if you're going to win in today's market, all you have to do, and again, it was 2008, 2009. Our team in 2008 did 100 transactions. In 2009, we did 200. We doubled in the worst real estate market in history. And the reason why is, and I share this now as something that I've coined as oppositional offense. Oppositional offense. And if you were on Monday Morning Mojo, you heard me talk about this. But oppositional offense is you look at what are the majority of people doing right now. Are they playing offense or defense in our industry? Defense. They're scared. And what we intend to do is just do the opposite. You can always look at where the herd is moving and know what to do, because whatever they're doing, just do the opposite, right? And so I wanted to just share those two things with you, that we've got a real opportunity to prove our value and to take market share, and um, where we're headed as far as interest rates and all of that. Just make sure that you're the person, you're the place that people are getting information from and helping them navigate this. You're going to pay it on the rate, or you're going to pay it on the price. And getting or creating urgency on the buy side of the business is the name of the game right now. And I know each and every one of you are able and capable of doing that. But let's switch gears here. The thing I had mentioned is that, I've been spending more and more time training coaches. And I like to think of everybody that I work with, whether they are a rainmaker, operations, agent on a team, as a coaching leader. And to me, coaching leaders are like the highest, that is the highest, it's the Everest of leadership, because coaching leaders, listen to what I'm about to say. They have a very unique skill set that allows them to bring out the best in others. They have a unique skill set that when you talk to these people, you walk away from that conversation feeling as if anything is possible for you. See, coaching leaders are the ones that change the relationship that we have to possibility. And your behavior, your actions day to day are always governed by the relationship that you have to possibility, to what you believe is possible for you. Now, as that relates to goals, one of my favorite questions that I like to ask people, and I don't ask this that often, but I'll never forget. I had a rainmaker who he actually retired from the business, but he called me one day and he said, "Our call is this Friday, and I want you to talk to this agent on our team, because she started out of the gate, her first year, she sold 32 houses. And this year, she's barely on track. And this was in like October. She said she's barely on track to break 20. I mean, her business didn't grow forward. In fact, it went really like substantially backwards." And he said, "I just can't figure out why." I said, "Okay." So we agreed that she was going to take his call. I get her on the call. And the first thing that we're always looking for as a coaching leader, whether it's with ourselves or others, is context. I've got to understand where she is. So I said, obviously, that your business, your production has moved backwards substantially. And I said, "So tell me about why you achieved at such a high level last year." Because here's one thing that I know for sure, you guys, is we study the hows of people way too much. We don't look enough into their whys. And so what I did is I asked her, I was like, why is it that in the previous year you had such a big year? And she started to share this story with me about how when she first got into the business, she was a first generation immigrant from Mexico. And this team was in Arizona, which obviously, is very close to the border. And she said, in my first year, I had to make enough money that I could buy a home, have a down payment for a home. And because I'm an immigrant, I have to have 20% down. And I wanted to buy a house that was big enough, because the Hispanic community it's very popular in the Hispanic community to have multi-generational living, where you have multiple generations living under one roof. And she said, I had to buy a house, I had to have 20% down, and it had to be big enough that my mom and dad could immigrate from Mexico as well. And we would have enough space that we could all establish, like a homestead, where this is going to be our place for generations to come. And she said, so I just thought about that all the time, that it was on me to buy this home, to make the money, to put it down, to get my people over here, and to do it in a way that was legal, that no one could ever take it away from us. It was like magic formula, right? See, she had tapped into this deep level of hunger around her goal. And the question that I like to ask people, and I'll say this slow and I'll say it a few times, and it's one that sometimes when people hear it, boom, they automatically know the answer to. Sometimes they have to reflect and the answer comes back to them. Normally, when you're doing something like driving or doing laundry, something that you're not really having to think about. But the question is, tell me about a time that you wanted something and you wanted it bad. Tell me about a time you wanted something. I mean, you wanted it bad. Like you had to have it. And you had no idea how to get it. No idea how to get it. But you knew in your heart you would. And you did. Tell me about a time that you wanted something. I mean, you wanted it bad, like had to have it, and had no idea how you were going to get it. You didn't know the how, but you knew in your heart you would, and you did. See, the first time I was asked that question, I instantly came up with the answer. I had a really great friend that I grew up with. We went preschool all the way to senior years in high school together. We grew up in the same church. We were in the same little bitty town. He was one of my best friends. He went off to college at a small university in Gunnison, Colorado. And he was just like a complete ski bum. He skied 100 days out of the year. And to support his skiing habit, he worked for the resort on Mount Crested Butte. And one night, unfortunately, he was grooming the slopes, and he was on one of those giant cat, piece of machinery, and he fell off of it, and it rolled over him and killed him. And his name was Chris, and Chris was just one of those special people that, like I had mentioned earlier, they bring out the best in you. He was just one of those people that never had an ill word to say about anybody. And he was such a special guy. At the age of 20, there were over 800 people at his funeral. I mean, it was huge. And later, because we went to high school together, we were going to do our 10-year reunion. And we were trying to figure out ways that we could honor Chris's memory, but do it in a way that was really, really symbolic of who he was. And so we started throwing out all these ideas. Could we do a bench in the park? That's cool, but that's not really Chris. Could we, plant a tree? And that's cool, but not really. But when Chris and I were kids, one of the things we always did when I lived in the country in the middle of nowhere, he lived in town. So anytime he would come to our house, he always wanted to build a tree house. And so I remember sitting there at his parents' dinner table, and it hit me. I said, we need to build a tree house, and we need to make it really great. So we started doing research. Now, this was back in 2012, right? And we found this company out in California that builds these amazing tree houses. And we looked at the cost of everything, shipping, the tree house, installation, all of it. And it was like $25,000. Now, at this point, I didn't have two nickels to rub together. My real estate career had started and stopped. I had made some decisions that caused us to get really off the rails. And I needed $25,000, and I had no idea how I was going to get it. None. And yet I knew in my heart I would, and I did. And the way I did it is we put on a concert, and we raised the money, and we raised enough donations in one night to pay for that tree house, and it was built the very next year. So I share that with you because you've all had an experience like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that you've bought. Like the first time I ever asked this of another person, I'll never forget, for her, it was making the varsity track team as a freshman. And yet, most of the time, when you undo the process, the timeline that you lived through, the first thing that you did is you stood in the possibility. And what I mean by that is, instead of it being like a hope, oh man, I hope this happens, it was, this is happening. It's not a matter of if, it's when. It is a foregone conclusion. It's not possible, it's probable. And so the reason I share that with you is that I believe that many of us have what I call stated goals. We don't have real goals. Stated goals are the ones that we talk about. And are the way that you can always tell the difference between a stated and a real goal is stated goals are just those of your audio, you talking. Real goals involve your video. See, when you have a real goal, your behavior maps to that goal. Your audio and video match. And for the majority of the world, and I think it's the single biggest reason that so many people fail to achieve their goals, is that they are stated, not real. And the way that we make them real is we get so clear on the payoff, the reason that this thing is a must for us, not a should or would be nice to have. And so what I really want to appeal here to you is, how do we tap the deep wells of hunger and potential that are inside each and every one of you, so that you live in a real goal, and you're one of those people that, regardless of what happens in the market, the industry, whatever, you are steadfast, focused on the quality long-term results and the quality long-term actions that will deliver this to you.